Welcome to the Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting, February 15th, 2011. We're going to begin our meeting with the salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pullen, can you call the roll, please? Here.
Here? Here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gray, I believe we did get a phone call from Mr. Zupka. He's under the weather today, so he's not going to make it this evening, right?
Yes, that's correct, Mr.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on with our agenda. Get started right away. First item is Air Products relocation request. This is preliminary and final land development. This is a piece of property within the U.S. Steel, former U.S. Steel Works, USS Real Estate. Mr. Gray, anything to add to this?
Yes, the applicant is proposing construction of a 16,000 square foot building and a 1,500 square foot modular office building. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. Doug Maloney.
Thank you. Good evening. Doug Maloney, representing Air Products and Chemicals, Inc. Very briefly, we are proposing to move an existing structure that's somewhat interesting in that it's a steel structure with a fabric membrane surrounding it, used quite often, as I've recently learned, in port facilities. It's been in your township for about 10 years, and it's being crowded out by the expanding landfill. So they're moving that structure about a quarter of a mile to its new location, and they're adding a modular office building. And that's what this project involves. You've heard about a 16,000 square foot building. That's the steel and fabric building that we're moving. 1,500 square foot modular office building. What my client does is manufacture gas liquefaction machinery, and these are huge pieces of machinery. They're manufactured in Wilkes-Barre, brought down by rail for final fitting out here, and then shipped via the Kinder Morgan port facility. So a train brings these right into this large building. They are jacked up, train pulls out, and then the machinery is fitted out with nozzles and things like that at the site. So the building itself isn't occupied full time. It's only occupied when one of these large pieces of equipment is shipped down here to be worked on. As far as land development goes, there are really very few issues. The two zoning comments and all the comments are incorporated in the resolution that has been prepared by your solicitor's office. The two zoning comments are both will complies from the T&M review letter. The last letter is January 24 of 2011. There are 5 waiver requests. They're relatively minor in nature. We're proposing a waiver from the curb requirements for our driveways. That's because it's a relatively flat site, and that would impede the stormwater management facilities that we have planned. We are requesting a waiver from the requirement to have trees in the parking areas and from the street trees. This is a heavily industrial area, as you can imagine, and the street trees really don't make much sense. We are proposing a fee in lieu, though, which you will see in Section D as a condition of the waiver of the trees, of contribution of $3,500 to the townships for putting trees elsewhere. We are requesting a waiver of providing all features within 200 feet of the property. As usual, we are proposing to put in whatever features the township engineer requires, but not put in all of them, and that's simply an engineering sort of drafting issue. And then finally, we're requesting a waiver from a section of your stormwater management ordinance that requires 15-inch pipes, and we're proposing an 8-inch pipe for 2 reasons. One is due to the relatively low volume that will be handled by this particular pipe, but I'm also advised by our engineer that there are conflicts with other utilities in that area, which suggest that a smaller pipe makes more sense. I should have introduced at the beginning Tim Stout as our project engineer, and we also have Robert Hauk, who is the project manager, who's seated over there, who's present if you have any questions about the operation of the facility, how it works, and Mr. Stout obviously can answer any engineering questions.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay. Just to address one thing, I'm assuming one of the board members will bring it up. There's a fire marshal review letter. The most recent one I have is November 2nd.
Yes.
I'm assuming that you've seen that. I'm assuming, Mr. Gray, that's the most recent review letter is November 2nd from Mr. DiPolito?
Yes, it is November 2nd.
Okay. And there's two issues on there regarding fire hydrants and the access road.
The plan was revised in response to those,
Okay.
and the hydrant is in. I think the access road is in this plan.
All right, thank you.
There was
Thanks.
also a TPD review letter of November 17th,
Right.
and we addressed those comments in this revision of the plans. What happened is we told the Planning Commission that we wanted both preliminary and final. There were a lot of will complies in the original review letters from both TPD and T&M. And we agreed not to come before you until we addressed all of those. So what you have before you is a set of cleaned-up plans to avoid a lot of will complies in the hopes that you would grant us both preliminary and final.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the explanation. All right. Mr. Snipes, comments or questions?
Could you just give the numbers again of the 5 waivers that you're requesting? I have the trees and the size of the storm sewer pipe. What were the other 3?
Let's see, curbing of the driveway.
And what number is that? What section of that is?
That is section 36D of your
Okay.
subdivision land development ordinance. Trees in the parking areas.
I have that. Right.
Okay, that's 37G4. Street trees, that's 48A. Showing features within 200 feet of the land that's being developed, that's section 78C2.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask our engineer if he has any concern about the change in the size of the pipe, the request for a waiver on the size of the pipe.
I have no concerns about that. It's a privately owned pipe that's required to be maintained by the applicant.
Okay. And you are willing to give the fee? I don't have the fee in lieu of the trees. Is that the correct
$3,500, yeah.
fee that we would charge
Yeah.
for the number of trees? I don't know the number and the cost and et cetera right in front of me. You feel comfortable with that, Mr. Gray?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have right now, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Dents?
No, Mr. Snipes touched on all my questions.
Okay. Just, I guess, a question maybe I had about the operation. You said basically what's going here now is already in existence, just in a different area.
Yes,
Okay, and this is
quarter of a
moving, all
mile away.
right, it's moving closer to the port? Is that my understanding with this property, or?
I'm not sure if it's moving closer to the port, it's moving further away from the landfill.
Okay. Okay. And the building, you're saying it's a 16,000 square foot building, you said?
16,625 square feet.
So I'm picturing that almost like, sort of like an airplane hangar sort of type structure?
Pretty much like an airplane hangar. I guess a tall, skinny airplane hangar.
Okay, all right,
And it has one rail line going right down the middle of it.
okay. All right, for the offloading and everything
Yeah.
else. Okay. All right, now those, you addressed the issues I had, and Mr. Snipes also addressed some of the issues that I was going to raise. Is there any public comment needed? See no hands. Okay, so we're looking at resolution 11-6.
6.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Mr.
Sullivan.
Maloney, are you still asking for a waiver from the paving section?
No, Mr. Stout has advised me that we don't require that waiver.
We're going to provide geotechnical.
Mr. Stout, I'm sorry, you're going to have to use a microphone.
We're going to provide a geotechnical report to support our design section. I wasn't clear whether or not that would require a waiver from the ordinance or not. Either way, I think we're in agreement that if we provide the information on our section, that we'll come to an agreement on the design section of the pavement.
Mr. Sullivan?
I believe there should be a waiver granted for that,
Okay,
and conditioned upon the fact that the applicant provides the information. They just indicated that they would.
all right. And which section of the?
That's actually included in the resolution
It
under
is.
That is
paragraph,
correct. That's,
section D, paragraph E.
Okay, I see it.
D1C.
191, Appendix A. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
What was the resolution number again, Mr. Chairman?
11-6. All right. Any other comments, Mr. Sullivan?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion then to, regarding Resolution 11-6, preliminary and final land development for Air Products?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2011-06 for Air Products preliminary and final land development with the 5 waivers we touched on. All of a sudden, I put my paper
Six.
aside.
There's
6
six at this point,
waivers.
right.
I'm sorry. Do we have the numbers of those right in front of us? 19136D, 19137G4, 19148A, 19178C2, and is there one more?
191, Appendix A, and 187-13B1.
Okay, yes. Oh, here it is. Yeah, 18713B1.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second?
Second the motion?
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to agenda item number 2, which is the learning experience preliminary land development. This is on 8829 New Falls Road. This was a project that was before us in the fall, I believe, maybe late summer or something. The board heard some of the input and asked learning experience to maybe find some more information out for us. Mr. Gray?
Yes, as mentioned, this is the learning experience located on New Falls Road. The applicant is proposing to build an 11,000 square foot child care center. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. Kurt Schaefer.
Good evening, gentlemen. Just let me say also that with me is our engineer, Mike Dippo, our traffic engineer, Andy Heinrich, and also the area manager from the Learning Experience. These people are here tonight primarily because at the last meeting, certain issues arose. We revised the plan. We did certain traffic studies and certain parking counts. And our engineer's report has been submitted to the township and the township's traffic engineer. And we bring our traffic engineer and our area manager from TLE with us in the event the board wishes anything in those traffic counts or in that report to be expanded upon. I have before me the proposed resolution. The zoning information is all accurate. The requested waivers are correct. The certain waivers are being eliminated, and the notice, the notations where those waivers are being eliminated are also correct. There really is, in terms of waiver issues, only one that I think needs to have a certain amount of discussion, and that is with respect to section 1981.36D of your ordinance. That is called out in section E, general traffic comments, subsection 4, where that section of the ordinance calls for a maximum driveway grade for non-residential uses of 5%. We started out when these plans were submitted at 16%. We've sort of got it down to 9%. The concern we have is to get the grade any lower than that, then we really need to start dropping the site. And if you recall, there's certain large steep slopes around it, and the more we drop the site, the steeper those slopes become, and the more of a retaining wall is required. So I bring that out early on because if that is a concern for the township and the township is so inclined to allow us to proceed with an 8% grade, we would ask that the waiver request be amended to include that particular section.
Okay. Okay. And just so we're clear, the waivers you're requesting One would be requiring all driveways or parking spaces within vehicle parking facilities to be more than 12 feet from a property line, requiring a 5-foot setback of parking from the ultimate right-of-way, no grading within 5 feet of property line, requiring street trees, requiring resource protection from steep slopes. Is that correct?
Those are the 5, yes.
Plus the one you just mentioned earlier,
Yes.
a second ago. Okay. And those are listed, as you said correctly. And everything else from the review letters we have, from traffic planning and design, and from T&M, and from the fire marshal are will complies?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The latest one, right? From
Yeah.
Rich.
Yes, the most recent fire marshal letter we have is January 17th. Is that the one you have? Let's see.
Thank you. Yes, that's the one I have.
Okay, all right.
We also have, there is a revised plan where we have done the turning radius for the large truck as well.
Okay. Mr. Schaefer, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, before I go to board comment, obviously it's been several months since you were here, and for those people that saw that presentation, whether on the web or on the cable channel, or some people who are here or came back maybe, or are here for the first time to hear about this, if you could run through the plan again, just what exactly is going to be going on here, and I would like you to pay some attention to the traffic study that was done, just so that people, the public knows. Obviously, we have the traffic study that you prepared, and we've looked at it, but obviously the public hasn't. So if you could give them the findings, or have someone give them the findings, so that they know what it was that you found out with this study.
Certainly. Well, with respect to a summation of the plan, these are really 2 contiguous lots. They're about 1.8 plus acres in size. The proposal is to demo the existing structures, which probably could happen with a good breeze, and create an 11,000 square foot, 1-story building to be operated by the Learning Experience. They're a child development center. They're nationwide. They run about 300 plus facilities coast to coast. The facility would be a 5-day-a-week facility. I think it's 6 in the morning to 6:30 in the afternoon. They don't do weekends. They don't do evenings. They don't do private bus service. You bring your child and you take your child home. The plan proposes an entranceway on New Falls Road. You would enter the site from roughly the center of the property. All faculty and employees would immediately go to the right and park to the right in what we're considering the employee parking area. Parents dropping off children would go to the left, and there are pickup and drop-off stalls in the front of the building. That's a one-way drive, right to left as you look at the plan, and then they go to the exit on the far left side of the plan and make a right or a left out of that exit. But that is not an entranceway, that's an exit only. What we did with respect to the traffic concerns, and I'm going to allow our traffic engineer to elaborate on it a little bit more because I don't want to misspeak on it, but I will say that what we deliberately tried to do was we went through the TLE facilities in Pennsylvania and New Jersey trying to find something that's sort of comparable to this. And what we did find was an 11,000 square foot building that stands alone. It's not part of a larger shopping center. We had the employees do actual traffic counts and count the cars on an every 15-minute interval. We did certain studies on the site, and I guess at this point I'll ask Mr. Heinrich to come forward and just sort of summarize for the public your study, your methodology, and what your findings were.
Good evening. As has been reported and as you've held up, we initially prepared a traffic study for the proposed development. As a result of direction received from the township, we were asked to seek guidance from PennDOT, which we did. We met PennDOT representatives at the site one afternoon. The original plan came in with a single driveway that would serve the whole development. PennDOT, based on PennDOT guidance, that access plan was modified to add the exit-only driveway at the west end of the site. And as Mr. Schaefer has indicated, traffic in front of the building now, mostly the parents dropping off or picking up, will now be in a more or less counterclockwise direction, entering the easterly full movement driveway, passing in front of the building to use one of the stalls in front of the building, and then exiting at the western end exit only driveway. As a result of comments from your traffic engineer, and I believe directly from you at a previous meeting, we prepared 2 supplements to our traffic study. The one supplement was to actually do a what's called a gap study in traffic. We measured empirically the gaps in traffic along New Falls Road to support the analysis that was presented in our traffic study to show that there are adequate gaps for traffic to enter and exit the driveways that are proposed to accommodate adequately with relatively minor delay traffic entering and exiting the site. That empirical data supported the results of our traffic study. And then secondarily, we went out and actually did a parking survey at an existing learning center in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, of almost identical size, that being 11,000 square feet with a maximum enrollment of 180 children. And that site provided 42 spaces. This site, I believe, only has 41 spaces, but relatively identical. That parking survey supported the parking proposed for this site. So I think at this point, your traffic consultant, Mr. Baker from TPD, has agreed that for access purposes and for parking purposes, we've provided the sufficient documentation to support what is being proposed as part of this development. I might also just point out that as a result of PennDOT policy, and ultimately, obviously, we have to obtain a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT, that New Falls Road will be widened in front of the site for a left turn lane into the site at the main driveway. So if there's any further questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. All right, well, I'll go to board members, either from Mr. Schaefer or Mr. What's your name?
Heinrich.
Heinrich? Okay. Mr. Schaefer or Mr. Heinrich regarding this, and then we will turn it over to public comment after the board gets a chance to ask some questions and if the professionals have any. Mr. Snipes, comments or questions?
Just at the very end there, you mentioned a left turn lane only for people turning left into the school.
You have to stay, Mr. Heinrich, you have to take the microphone if you're going to speak.
Riding
Sorry.
east, I guess, on New Falls Road.
Yes, New Falls, next door at Vermillion Square Shopping Center, the New Falls Road is widened for, there is a left turn lane into their driveways.
Correct.
Just off the east end, I guess, of this plan here, you can see some of the tapering that exists for that left turn lane, the very east end of this the project. We're going to now widen and extend that left turn lane across pretty much the entire frontage. So from a point just to the east of the westerly driveway, there will be a left turn lane in the middle of New Falls Road so that traffic coming from the west, turning in, waiting for a gap in eastbound traffic flow, has a separate lane to wait to make the turn into the driveway so that through traffic can proceed around them.
So what does that process look like with PennDOT? How would that fit with your construction schedule, and how quickly do you see that happening?
Like I said, we've already met with PennDOT, so they know that this is coming. They're aware of our plans. We just have to go through the formal permitting process of submitting the construction plans, the maintenance and protection of traffic plans during construction, signage, and so forth to support what we're proposing to do, so that they can see that this will, after constructed, will work from a construction standpoint.
And every indication you have is that if they'd done it at the Vermillion Square Shopping Center, why wouldn't they do it here?
Pretty much, yes.
Right. And what if, for some reason, they say no?
Who, PennDOT?
Yeah, PennDOT.
I'm not sure what you mean. We're following their instruction. This is my initial traffic study. We already had this as part of our plan. We've demonstrated to them, both at the site and through emails, that this is what we're proposing to do, and now it's just a matter of submitting the formal documentation for the permitting approval through their process.
No, you're very optimistic. I hope you're correct. Just our experience with PennDOT has not been that positive, but this is a different situation. So you're saying there might be as many as 180 children attending the daycare center?
The maximum enrollment is for, I guess the terminology, it will be licensed for 180 children. What we've been told and what I've seen, not just with this chain of daycare centers, but it's rare that every day of the week you see maximum enrollment. Children are there 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week. Some are there only mornings, some are only there in the afternoon. So it's rare that 180 children will be here at any one time, but the maximum enrollment is 180.
Right. So say it's 150 any given morning, for instance. Then I don't know how you calculate this. How do you figure out in what time frame 150 children are going to be dropped off? Is that over an hour or half an hour or 2 hours? Or,
No.
and then how do you gauge the potentially 150 cars flowing through what looks like a fairly small area?
Well, first of all, having worked for various chains over the year, but then specifically the parking survey that we took at the Cherry Hill site, it shows that it's pretty much over a 3-hour period, 6:30 to 9:30 in the morning. Over that 3-hour period, traffic is in and out, dropping off the children, and in the afternoon it's pretty much 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. It's over a 3-hour period, and it's pretty much of a constant thing. There's not a mad rush where all the parents are coming at one time. Everybody has their own schedules for going to work during the day, and if you work in Center City and you're dropping the kids off, you're coming at one time, but if you're working in Falls Township, you're at a completely different time dropping off your child in the morning. So, like I said, most of these facilities, you'll see a constant flow of traffic in and out. It's not a mad rush all at one time. So with that kind of pattern that you see typically at most daycare centers, you don't see an overload of the parking spaces, and that was what was clearly shown in the parking survey that we had completed.
Just one last question. With the number of employees and then the number of parents dropping or picking off, and I assume they sometimes have to park and walk the child in, or?
Actually, everybody pretty much has to park. There's not a drop-off lane or anything like that. The children have to be walked into the building for security purposes and vice versa.
So at any given point, how many spots are completely filled by employees? Do you know that?
For the purpose of the parking survey, we've suggested upwards of about 20 to 22 spaces.
Okay.
Now, we've assumed that all the staff would show up first thing in the morning before the children are dropped off, and that's not, again, not the way it happens. If you have 2 classes for 4-year-olds, for example, you might only have one of those teachers there initially, and then the second one will arrive later as the demand picks up and you start to fill the second class, something along those lines. So you'll actually see the teachers arrive probably over a 3-hour period. Some might only be there for the morning, and some might only be there for the afternoon as well. But for the purposes of the parking survey, we had assumed that all of them were there before the parents show up, so that we were somewhat conservative in how we estimated that.
And you're assuming they're all parking on the right, in the right-hand lot, which that's what you're calling the employee lot, or the left-hand lot?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the operators of the facility will be able to direct their employees to do so, and you want to keep the front parking spaces clear for the drop-off operation. When those spaces are all full, then the overflow will start to use the parking lot to the side, but this parking lot to the side will be where the teachers and staff will park.
Okay. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Dents?
I have only comment is that the last time they were before us, our concerns were mainly the parking, and they did a very comprehensive traffic study and pretty much addressed all our concerns. I like the in and out. It still does seem like a small parking lot for dropping off, and I think it's very optimistic that PennDOT's going to just agree with whatever you're going with there. But hopefully that works out, because the turning lane seems to be a good idea. I have no questions. That was the only comment I had.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, hopefully if PennDOT's as works as well with you as you say they will, we're going to need your help at the Fuddruckers intersection, which has been about 10 years now, and they haven't done anything. But I do have, I mean, and I do appreciate the work you did. I think Mr. Dent said it very well. We sent you, I guess, back to a little bit to the drawing board when you were here the first time, because we did have major concerns about the parking. And you did do a very thorough review, even so far up to the traffic light intersection at Hood Boulevard, and what impact there might be there. And looking just at the statistics, I mean, my very rough kind of breakdown is that essentially of all the traffic you see on New Falls Road in the morning, and then you also did in the afternoon, especially at the peak hour, in the morning and the peak hour of the afternoon. At one point, it looks like approximately 8% of the cars traveling on New Falls would be using this site during that 1 hour. And in the afternoon, you're looking more at something like 5%, which of course means that 95% of the cars aren't using it. The concern I have, maybe you can comment on this too, is, and having had children that were in daycares at one point, and I understand what you're talking about, where you have a child who's in the Monday, Wednesday, Friday AM, pre-K program or something like that, and then another child might be in Tuesday, Thursday all day, and Monday. Some kids are Monday, Wednesday, Friday all day, and sometimes PM, AM. But I do remember going to pick up, my son at times and my daughter at times, and everybody shows up at noon because the 3-year-old class, the 4-year-old class, whatever, if there's 2 classes of each, that AM class is over. And so now you have all these parents showing up and standing in the line outside the classroom, and the teacher taking their time to say, making sure that they account for, as they should, every child is going home with somebody they're supposed to go home with, which of course is an important thing. But I still have some concern about, roughly 15 spots, which is what you have in front of the building, which you're identifying as parent parking. The other spots on the right-hand side of this drawing, this diagram plan, 27 spots are for faculty. I still am a little bit leery about having people show up, to pick up the AM class at noon or 11:30 or whenever it lets out, and everybody being able to sort of park in a rational way, and then pick up their kids, and which obviously doesn't happen lickety split. If you have smaller kids, I remember my wife doing this and me doing it, you have the baby in the car seat, so you're pulling in, you're getting the baby out of the car seat, you're walking in, carrying the baby, you're putting, getting my son walking back out, putting the baby back in the car seat, and is there enough time to really do that? Looking at this, I mean, I'm looking at 100. You're saying, bless you, using, and Mr. Snipes' number of 150 was kind of arbitrary, but if you're saying it's heavy over 3 hours in the morning, 6:30 to 9:30, I think you said, roughly 3:30 to 6:30, I believe you said in the evening, was the heaviest time at 150 cars, roughly 50 cars an hour. So it's a little, it's more than, or it's a little less than 1 car, a minute or something. It's, I guess, every minute, 10 seconds or something like that, a car is coming in. And I'm trying to think of, okay, is it a minute and 10 seconds to get out of my car, go get my child, come back out, and get out before the other car pulls in and needs that spot?
In reference to that, I think in one of our responses to TPD's comments, we actually referenced some research data that quantified on an average basis how long parents park in a space, both in the morning when they're dropping off and in the afternoon when they're picking up. Mm-hmm. I forget the exact numbers, but on average, and of course there's some that are much faster, there are obviously more that are longer, but on average, I think the morning drop-off time was like 5.6 seconds per vehicle or per parent. In the afternoon, I think was 6.8 seconds per vehicle. I might have that reversed, but those were roughly the time periods. So if you apply that across the board, and like I say, obviously there are going to be some that are faster and some that are going to be slower, but on average, when you apply that to all those trips during that 3-hour period, it seems to work out, and the number of spaces are adequate for that. And also, just a slight correction, if you will, the spaces on the right aren't just for staff and employees. They will be directed to park over there. They should not be in the front spaces. Right. But these spaces, to the extent they're not being used by staff and employees, are also available for overflow if the spaces in front are filled up.
All right. Do you have someone, and I saw somebody sort of walk up when I was asking some of the questions about the specific operations. I'm assuming that she might speak on this. But is there somebody who can speak regarding, at any given time, how many faculty spots do you expect to be filled? Let's say at, where you said between 6:30 and 9:30. So let's just pick, 7 o'clock or something like that, or let's rather 7:30 or 8 o'clock or something, roughly in the 8 o'clock, right in the middle there. How many teacher spots are filled at that point? Because that obviously helps explain how many extra spots we're going to have for parents.
No, I can't answer that.
I didn't. Yeah, I was. didn't think you'd be able to. I just thought somebody could.
If I may make just a couple of points, then
Sure.
introduce our representative from TLE. Just in an effort to assuage some of your concerns, two things I'd like you to keep in mind. One, we talked about the number of students at the facility. It's the policy of the learning experience never to fill a facility to capacity. The idea is that once the 3-year-old grows a little bigger, you don't want them with the other 3-year-olds, you want them with the 4-year-olds. So they always keep room to allow the children to move on to the more advanced classes. Secondly, and I think our representative will confirm this, but if you ask any rep of TLE, they'll tell you that on average about 20% of the students show up with a sibling. So I don't want the board to think that it's one child per car. If you've got 2 children, if you've got 3 children, you're going to send them to the same daycare facility. So that does, to the extent it assuages your concerns, that's
Right.
great. Angela, would you come forward? Mastrio Giovanni, is that how you say it? Okay. Allow me, please.
Hi, I'm Angela Mastro Giovanni. I am one of the area managers for the learning experience. I did notice that you were concerned about, at 12 o'clock when class ends, we actually don't have classes. So there isn't a specific time where the bell will ring and parents are coming in to pick up. It is staggered and it is based on the individual parent, what time they get out of work. Most of our parents are working parents, so they're going to come and pick up their child when they can, between the hours of 6:30 and 6:30.
Okay. All right, so it's not necessarily I'm signing my child up for the AM 4-year-old program.
Correct.
It's the 4-year-old program, and if I come and pick up the child at noon, because that's when I have the ability to, that's when it happens.
That's when you come in,
Okay.
yep. So there isn't
Okay.
a rush of parents at any particular time.
Okay. And you're looking at, it goes basically from infant up to, obviously 4-year-olds, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, and how many classes roughly? What's the faculty like, basically? What are you looking at with a facility roughly this size? How many faculty?
It's about 10 classrooms with 2 teachers per classroom, so it'll be 20 teachers.
Okay. All right. You've got 27 spots on the right-hand side. And I think Mr. Schaefer had said the 20 teachers wouldn't necessarily be there all at the same time.
All at the same time, correct.
Okay.
So they'll come as the parents come. We know every parent's roughly their schedule, and we staff accordingly to that.
Okay.
So at about 7, we'll only have half of our staff there.
Okay.
More closer to 9, we'll have the other half. So then that would be the time there'll be more 20 at one time.
Okay. There's another question I had, and I was trying to think of what it was now. Any questions for Ms. Master Giovanni?
No.
No? Mr. Snipes, any questions for you?
Just out of curiosity, about how many students how many children are basically in a classroom?
It is based on the classroom and the age. Usually the younger classrooms, there's less kids.
Right.
Infant rooms are usually about 8 to 12. In our preschool rooms, which their kids are about 3 to 4, there's about 20 kids in the classroom. And the amount of teachers in a room depends on the child's age as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
It was helpful to hear what you said about the time the staff come as well, because there could be a rush of parents. There could be many parents coming in earlier when a number of the staff members haven't arrived yet.
right.
And I'm personally, I'm not pushing to build a giant parking lot that doesn't get used by anyone with empty spaces all the time. That's not to benefit of anyone, but we do want to make sure the traffic flow works, doesn't jam up traffic on the road, obviously.
And one of the things, and Mr. Schaefer talked a little bit about this, but I'm assuming I'm correct on this. I know you don't do your own bus service.
Correct.
So, and I'm also assuming that like most daycare centers or facilities like this, you don't have buses bringing students to you. It's all pretty much private cars, parents dropping off.
It is private cars. The public school system can come and bus the children for an after-school program if the parents sign up for it. But it
Okay.
depends on the school district and if that's something they'll even do for us.
Right. And what's the age limit you take, though? You take up to?
Up to 5.
Up to 5.
Yeah.
All right. So that I don't see that happening in at least not in Pennsbury. I don't see that happening for not after-school activities for 5-year-olds. No, that doesn't.
Right.
They don't do that. They've canceled after-school buses for everybody else. I mean, it's So, all right. Those are all the questions I had. Thank you. I'm going to open up to public comments. So some people may have questions, Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Heinrich, or yourself. Okay. So just so you know. But thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Clark, any questions?
Yes, if I could, for Mr. Schaefer. Mr. Schaefer, did my file doesn't indicate whether or not the Planning Commission voted either to recommend approval or recommend non-approval of this, this project. You obviously went before the Planning Commission. Can you tell us what happened when you did?
They recommended...
I'm sorry, Mr. Schaefer, you have to use the microphone.
My recollection is that the Planning Commission did vote to grant preliminary approval. I'm sort of thumbing through my notes, and I can't actually put my finger on when that happened, but that is my recollection.
Well, if your notes are incorrect, the chairman of the Planning Commission is here. I'm sure he'll correct that. Also, have you applied for your highway occupancy permit from PennDOT as of yet?
Not yet. We needed preliminary approval from the supervisors to submit an HOP.
Okay. And I guess, Mr. Chairman, in response to that question, if I could just inquire of Mr. Sullivan on an issue.
Sure.
Mr. Sullivan, with the HOP not being applied for as of yet, does that impact your feelings as to whether or not this should be preliminary and final or only preliminary?
It would be more appropriate for the supervisors, if they so desired, to have preliminary approval only of this plan at this time.
Yeah. I know the agenda calls for preliminary land development. That's what I was looking at this point.
Expecting preliminary.
Yeah, I was expecting only preliminary, so, okay. All right, Mr. Sullivan, any other comments from you?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. I know Mr. Binney is here from our Planning Commission. Were you going to speak anyway? All right, so let's open public comment and just speak then. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Mr. Binney?
Good evening. I am Brian Binney, currently the chairman of the Planning Commission. For the record, this revised plan was submitted to the Planning Commission a few months ago, but then it was tabled at the request of the applicant, and the Planning Commission never did see the revised plan in front of them on their agenda.
Okay.
My questions are because we didn't see that plan, I'm going to ask some questions that I normally would know the answer to. Originally, the applicant asked for waivers of sidewalks and curbing along New Falls Road. Has that waiver been removed?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think I heard street trees, and that's probably because of the driveways.
Yes.
I think your concerns were our concerns when we saw this plan originally, was the traffic flows and the traffic studies and the safety of dropping off all these kids and picking them up. Something I didn't hear addressed was deliveries. When are deliveries going to occur? In this mix of all these parents picking up their children, dropping off their children in this small, tight area, how and when are the deliveries going to occur?
Yeah. I think there was, and I don't remember where I saw it. I don't remember which document I saw it in, but I believe there was a reference to deliveries and trash collection being after working hours. Is that correct? I see a lot of heads nodding among the TLA people. So,
Yes. I would also point out that the way TLA operates is they have a microwave to heat food up, but they don't prepare food, they don't cook food, they don't get large deliveries. So a panel truck is about the largest thing you're going to see, delivering most likely paper towels and other paper products.
okay.
Hand sanitizer.
I think in general, I think everybody agrees that this would look a lot nicer than what's currently there. But I think you guys are on the right path to make sure that all the traffic issues are squared away. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Binney. Okay. All right, other hands? Mr. Kenny?
That's incorrect.
I think we dragged our feet long enough on this project. We should pass it. They're going to build a new building. The kids ain't going to be no more in danger than they are now, where they're at. There's no problem with this place. Pass it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mariani?
Guido Mariani, Falls Township. I spoke in support of this project, and I think it was early December when I expected them to come back and make another presentation. And so rather than go through everything I said in December, I'll be quick, and I'll tell you that this is the type of center that helps assure children are ready for a learning experience, and that contributes substantially, you being a teacher understand this, to their later school experience. Now, demographics aside, because I gave you all the demographics about the type of households we have here, et cetera, and so forth, I say suffice it to say that Falls has the type of household whose need would be satisfied by this type of service. Now, as a result of my experience with New Falls Road traffic and especially pedestrian traffic, I don't anticipate any traffic flow problems, and that's including the drop-off, pickup, turnaround with this welcome and what I consider to be a needed service to Falls Township. Okay? And it also replaces an eyesore, and I think which is a potential hazard on New Falls. As a resident of New Falls, I think this is the kind of service that we need, that we should have, and if the only thing that's holding us up is your concern about traffic patterns on New Falls Road, you can forget it. It's not going to be a problem, and I'm asking you to please approve this, even if it's preliminary tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other concerns? Mr. Dell?
Gentlemen, I agree with Mr. Mariani about the traffic, but you have to remember too, New Falls is a dangerous road. I mean, personal experience, my grandmother got hit there 2 months ago and died from her injuries in a vehicle no more than 100 yards away from this facility. So she was pulling out of the Thornridge Shopping Center, got T-boned and died from her injuries about a week later. So I understand the traffic, traffic studies and everything else, but people do fly down that road. So take that into consideration. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't build a school there because people fly down the road, but it's a dangerous road, and that's why I was against sidewalks being on that road. It's going to be a beautiful building, better than what's there. It's a shack there now, and it's been a shack for, I think, 2 decades, maybe more. But New Falls Road is still a very dangerous road because of the volume of traffic when the high school lets out. And I don't know if that coincides when people are being picked up there. It doesn't sound like it, but it's still, I didn't know if they're going to have maybe how the schools have sort of like a crossing guard or a person out there, but I don't know if there's any additional traffic signals or yield signs or whatever the PennDOT's going to require of them. But I just want them to keep that in mind also. It's still a dangerous road, even though the traffic flow might be good on paper. It's still got to be very cautious there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other interested members of the public? I see no hands. Okay, is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I
All
have a
right.
question for Mr. Clark.
Yes.
This didn't go before the Planning Commission, yet it came before us. That doesn't make, is that possible?
I believe, according to Mr. Binney, it went there at one point, then it came to us where the plans were revised based on comments from TPD and based on the township. It went back to the Planning Commission, but was tabled at that point in time, and so it's appropriate to be here in front of you this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any final comments or questions regarding this? If it's approved, it would be Resolution 11-7.
7.
All right, and it would be only preliminary. Any final comments or questions? If not, is there a...
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask, first, Mr. Dell, I didn't hear about your grandmother, so I'm sorry to hear about that. And I agree with you, it's a dangerous road. There have been a number of serious accidents there. And I want to pick up on your comment about what kind of signage can also happen to, because this hasn't existed before. People are going to know when they're flying down that road that they need to slow down, that there's a new business in town that involves young children and families and cars pulling in and out. And it raises up, once again, the issue in our township of traffic calming and speeding, which is a constant issue, and people not taking the care they should in their own community, which is sad, plus folks that are driving through. So I'd like to, I'm not opposed to approving preliminary this evening, but I do want us to work a bit more to see how we can look at that road, and especially now with this daycare center coming in, how can we be as careful as we can possibly be with signage, and maybe there are other things we can do.
Yeah, maybe a question building on what you're talking about. Mr. Heinrich, I know you said you'd already had some conversations with PennDOT, and maybe just from your professional experience, do you anticipate having to put any kind of signage in the area of the school just to alert drivers to the presence of this building?
Probably not. Unfortunately, all the children here are driven to and from the site. If there were pedestrians, school children and so forth, crosswalks, that kind of thing, yes, there'd be the ability to provide pedestrian crosswalk signs or a pedestrian area sign, that kind of thing. But everybody's arriving in a car, so there's not a specific set of signage or anything like that that fits this kind of situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's a PennDOT road, so obviously that is why I'm asking about what PennDOT's going to require. Okay, Mr.
I'd like to add on that real quick, too.
Yeah.
I mean, until you give this business a chance to see what happens, I'm sure they'd adjust whatever they had to do. Should there be a traffic problem, they'd address any concern they had. There's a similar situation arose when Eleanor Roosevelt, when the school district brought their plans. There's a lot of people concerned, well, what if this, what if that? And you can't really answer that until you see what happens with traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, should there be a problem, they could address it and deal with it as it arises.
Right. Yeah, my concerns have never been about the nature of the facility. I have no problem, having a center like this. I agree with Mr. Mariani's point that this is certainly something that's needed. Obviously, the fact that it is a business that has over 300 sites around the country gives me a little bit of confidence in that they do have some experience knowing what they're talking about. But it always came back to, driving that road to and from work every single day, around 6:30, every morning, and coming home, around 3 or so every afternoon, turning in, coming out, especially people that want to come out and cross the lane of traffic, to sort of go where they need to go, or cross the lane of traffic to get in. So that was always my concern, and not wanting a backup of cars waiting for someone to back out while, the tail end of your car is sticking out on the highway. But I think the traffic study that the Learning Center did really does, it was very thorough, and I appreciate the effort they put into it. So is there a motion then, looking at Resolution 11-7?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, were there any?
I think the waivers are stated in here, and adding the waiver for 1981-.36.d, which was regarding the driveway grade. That was another waiver that was not specifically listed in the waivers in the ordinance, but was one requested by Mr. Schaefer. I think the periods are missing on that.
I think the ordinance section is 191.
191.
1981.
Right. Yeah.
So what is that? So do we need to list all the waivers at this point with a?
I think it's 191.36D.
No, it's in the resolution, right?
It's in the resolution.
All right,
yes.
I'm going to make a motion to approve Resolution 11-7 for preliminary land development for the learning experience.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 3 is consider proposal for engineering services for the community park regarding a parking area expansion. Mr. Gray?
Yes, Mr. Jim Sullivan of T&M has provided a proposal for engineering services concerning a parking expansion at the Falls Township Community Park. The location of the additional parking would be located near the basketball courts and across from the skateboard park. The quote for these services is $19,500. The board is asked to consider this proposal.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Sorry, we need a little bit of quiet. Thank you. All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Gray.
The quote for these services for the additional parking from T&M is $19,500. This time, the board is asked to consider the proposal provided by T&M. In addition, Mr. Bill Reese from the Park and Rec Department and Jim Sullivan from T&M are here to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay. All right. So, and I noticed we have a nice brand-new photograph of our community park. It's directly behind Mr. Clark. Yeah. And so we can kind of point this out probably where these spots will be. But Mr. Sullivan, if you could just give us an idea of how many spots we're putting in, where, specifically, I guess, where they're going, what kind of surfaces this is going to be, et cetera.
Well, the number of spots is yet to be determined at this point. We're going to put as many as we can near the basketball courts.
Mr. Gray, you want to point that out?
Right in this area. You want to do the bandwidth thing?
Pete, we need laser pointers.
Not in the lake, Mr. Gray. We're not putting parking spots in the lake.
Not in the lake, is correct. We hope to get about 10 to 12 spaces in that area.
Okay.
And the other area is along the curve near the skate park. Mr. Gray?
Yes.
There's already some parking along there. We're going to extend that, I think, as many as 30 spaces if we can get them in.
Okay.
The surface of the parking area would be your basic asphalt paved spaces.
Okay. All right. And I guess it's obvious we're looking to add parking in these two areas. Number one, because of the popularity of the skateboard park. And I'm assuming the dog park is another reason, the popularity of the dog park. I guess Mr. Reese can probably comment on. He's nodding his head. But
yeah, that's my understanding as
okay.
well.
Go ahead, Mr. Reese.
And for events.
Didn't mean to leave you out. Certainly, sure. Give us an idea why you think these are necessary.
Yeah, I think the adding the parking spots over by the basketball court and the hockey rink will help two things. On weekends, especially during the spring and summer, there's a lot of activity in the hockey rink area, and of course the dog park is always pretty crowded, especially on the weekends. And by adding these spots will certainly help alleviate that situation. We did have some problems with people parking on the grass along Wheat Chief, so I think this will help. And as far as the parking along when you're going off of Wheat Chief and then turn left, there's about maybe 7 or 8 parking spots existing, and then adding on from there all the way down to where the boating dock parking spots are. I think Mr. Sullivan said pretty close to 30 spots would really help us, especially with pavilion rentals as well. So during the summer months, especially on weekends, you could have anywhere from 250 up to 500, sometimes close to 1,000 people. And when we have soccer going on, it's when it gets closer to the 1,000 mark. So it will really be a big help, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Reese? I'm sorry, before he walks away. Sorry. Mr. Snipes?
You said 1,000 people or 1,000 cars you're talking about?
1,000 people. So for cars, you're probably talking about maybe between 200 and 300.
200 and 300. Okay.
Cars, yeah.
And how many spots do we have now?
Oh, boy.
In the whole park?
Just
I realize what you're talking about is far away.
Mostly, I guess maybe just poking on Phase 2 right now. There's not that many in Phase 2.
Yeah, Phase 2, I'm going to guess maybe 20 or 25 around the Phase 2 pavilion, play equipment. And then there's like maybe 8 or 9. When you're going off of Wheat Chief and turn left, there's about 8 or 9 there. And then then you got the boat rental, or the boat dock parking spots. And then when you continue around the road, there's about maybe 6 or 7 spots on each side until you get to the bridge. And then on Phase 1, I'm going to guess probably close to 60, 70 spots maybe.
Yeah. You've got about maybe 12 spots by the basketball courts, right? 10 or 12 maybe?
Yeah, there's about 12. Yeah, about 6 on each side. I think you're right, Mr. Harvey, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right.
So any additional parking will definitely be a big help for us, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Reese. In terms of what exactly T&M is doing, Mr. Sullivan, for this, what's this project entail on your behalf?
The project entails land surveying services for the areas where the parking is going to go, professional engineering design services, and then, of course, construction observation and administrative services.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from board members? Mr. Snipes?
No, none. Thank
Mr. Dents?
I'm just going to comment that both locations in the summer, like Mr. Reese said, trying to get into where I want to say by the hockey rink there is usually really backed up and a mess, especially if you're trying to get to the dog park. And the skate park backs up with cars too, so it's definitely needed in both areas.
Okay. All right. Any public comment needed? I see no hands. All right, is there a motion then to approve the engineering services for the parking area expansion, Falls Township Community Park, in the amount of $19,500?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mrs. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Gray?
Yes. Next item. Consider a proposal for engineering services for NPDES Phase 2, permitting year 8. T&M has provided a proposal for engineering services for assisting with the requirements associated with the Falls Township MS4 National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, Phase 2 Stormwater Management Program for year 8. Cost of this proposal is $8,400. At this time, the board is asked to consider this proposal from T&M. In addition, Mr. Steve Dadio from T&M is here to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay. All right. Just give us an idea, sir, if you don't mind, just what exactly is NPDES for people that don't know, and what is it that we need to be doing? And this is, so people understand, this is a state requirement, correct, that we have to do this? Or is it federal, rather?
This is a federal requirement through the EPA for the elimination of reduction of runoff causing impairments to surface waters. Through the NPDES program, the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is the state agent that has to carry out these EPA orders. So as a municipality, all of the stormwater system is part of that. It's called a Municipal Separate Stormwater System, the MS4 program. And while Phase 1 was initially supposed to be 5 years, there was a 2-year extension granted, and now another 2-year extension was granted. So this is year 8 of what will be a 9-year program before the next phase gets rolled out. Pennsylvania is unique in that every other state started Phase 2 after 5 years, but for various communication problems between the DEP and the EPA, it has been granted extensions on that. But it involves education of through the community and education of public works personnel, and a greater awareness of what goes on, what could potentially you do outside your home, how that could impact surface waters.
Okay. And just, I guess, maybe to, so people understand the issue here, anything that goes into the gutter, goes into the storm drain, doesn't go to any filtering, place. It doesn't go to any kind of water filtration plant that sort of, cleans it before it discharges it like, a sewer line would. Anything that goes down in that drain eventually just sort of washes out into some kind of body of water, a creek, a stream, a lake of some type, a river eventually. And so for people that just sort of throw stuff in the gutter and wait for the rain to wash it away or use the hose to squirt it, whatever you're putting into that gutter, whatever gets washed down there, even if it's, trash that, sometimes you see, kids are walking or people are walking on the street and they, empty out a bottle or something to throw it down the, in the drain. That eventually doesn't go someplace where it gets filtered. It washes into, it's the same as throwing it in the river or throwing it in a lake or throwing it anywhere else. And so the purpose of this is to sort of, or try as hard as you can to prevent that and minimize the impact. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from board members? Mr. Snipes?
Could you describe again why Pennsylvania's, I guess the EPA is extending this for 2 years? You said it was a communication problem, or? You don't really.
Well, no. I mean, there are reasons why. As a greater example, in the South Central region, some municipalities that were under this program never did anything, and it was in the papers last year. The EPA came up and fined them themselves because of there just is the DEP is understaffed in this program. There's one person in the DEP Southeastern Regional Office in Norristown who's in charge of reviewing all 150 to 160 municipality MS4s within the 5-county southeastern Pennsylvania region. So the DEP is the delegated agency, but I guess if you're asked for what the problem was, probably on the state end, they have not been able, they don't have adequate staffing to take it to the next level, so the EPA has granted them some extensions. The next phase of the Phase 2 of the NPDES program that's going on in other states is an enhanced version of what's going on now. So it's not as if Pennsylvania is suffering. Still positive steps are being done towards improving stormwater and educating the public about it. It's just this next phase hasn't been implemented in Pennsylvania yet. And in many other states, it's done on a countywide basis, so it's much easier to implement. Fewer jurisdictions that are involved.
Other states it's done on a county region.
Well, I mean, a lot of states south of the Mason-Dixon line, you know, governments are run on a county level,
Right,
so
yeah.
there's less involved.
So when we get to the next phase, things will be, the intent is to get our water to be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. So the next phase is going to be a little more tougher or more stringent or more educational or...
Well, just as an example, in the Phase 1 program, one of the requirements was to identify and present on a map all the outfalls, all the stormwater outfalls within a municipality or within an MS4. I got one of the, what's going to happen in the next phase is they're going to want to actually see all the infrastructure. So where the pipes are. So if, let's say, there was a spill on one street that potentially was going down a storm drain, they'd want to know where a spill of something that could potentially be hazardous to surface waters, they would want to know where the infrastructure is so that you could go where it
find out
daylights and you know, prevent that. So in that sense, it's more enhanced. You know, this initial 5-year program that's now 9 years was more of an inventory and a introduction to the process.
Thank you. I'd understood that under our new governor, DEP is set for some pretty deep cuts, or has already been hit by like 25% cuts. Maybe that's just certain offices of DEP. So I don't know if we're going to have any more success in actually getting the work done if we have fewer people doing it. It's kind of counterintuitive. But
no, that's
nothing you can do about it,
that's always
I guess.
an issue.
So it's too bad. I think we're headed in the wrong direction on that. Those are the only questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dents?
No questions or comments.
Okay. Any public comment needed? I see no hands. All right, is there a motion then to award the professional engineering services for the NPDES Phase 2 permitting year 8 to T&M in the amount not to exceed $8,400?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, items 6 and 7 are pretty similar. Both are authorizing advertising. We can authorize them separately, but we might as well hear them all at once. Or rather 5 and 6, I'm sorry. Numbers 5 and 6. Mr. Gray?
Yes. The first one, landscaping. Various locations throughout the township require landscaping services, including mulching, planting flowers, weeding, among other things. Township has used dawn to dusk for this service the last few years. At this time, the board is asked to consider authorizing advertisement for landscaping services for the township for 2011.
Okay. And I know with these kinds of issues, had a little bit of a problem last year in terms of the bid. The bids were basically, or the requests for bids were pretty broad, so that we're getting a lot of different people bidding different things. It was a little bit like comparing apples to oranges. I think we're going to clarify that this time.
Yeah, we're going to try to clarify a little bit more. Mr. Arneo, our Public Works foreman, will be available to answer any questions any prospective bidders may have. So hopefully it'll be a little more clear for anybody who wants to bid.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions from board members? This is authorizing advertising. Mr. Snipes?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents?
I'm just going to comment, it says that the township has used dawn to dusk for the last few years because they were the low bidder, right?
Last year they were the low bidder, yes.
I know Mr. Dell was here earlier. Last year, I know he bid on this work, but he said it was so vague of exactly what, like Mr. Harvey said, what was needed, where it was needed, how much mulch, et cetera, that it was tough to bid on. I wish he was here still, but he left, so he could comment on that. And I know I talked to Mr. Gray about this a week or so ago, and he said that Mr. Arneo was working with, I don't know if it was Mr. Dell or not, about how to put the bid spec together to adjust it, right?
Yeah, he has, Mr. Arneo is aware of the situation.
Okay.
Our
That's
hope
all
is
I had.
it'll be more clear for individuals this year.
Okay. All right, then. Is there a motion to authorize advertisement of the bids for landscaping services?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the next authorization to advertise is for fertilizing service. Mr. Gray?
Similar to the last one, various parks throughout the township require fertilization services, weed control, overseeding, grub control, and other services. Last year, the township used True Green for the service. At this time, the board is asked to consider authorizing advertisement for fertilizing services for the township for 2011.
Okay. And again, I'm assuming with the bid documents will be a little bit more specific this time compared to last year. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Snipes?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents?
No, nothing that I didn't say the last time.
Yeah, I don't have any of that. Said the two are very similar. See Mr. Dell chomping at the bit. Is there a motion to open public comment?
No, so moved,
No
yes.
motion.
I'm not seconding that.
All in favor? Aye.
I'll second it. All right.
I got called in here. I didn't know if there's some question you guys might have had. I didn't know. I missed most of
I
your...
just commented on last year with the landscaping services, how you commented that you bid on it, but it was very vague on how much mulch was needed, where, when.
It was very
cetera.
non-specific, and quantities weren't addressed,
Right.
and frequency of visits were definitely not addressed. And this is not a dig at the guy who's doing it currently, but if you come in here and there's leaves all outside, and the guy's supposed to be here once a week to clean up the leaves, I understand leaves continue to fall, but you have to ask yourself, when I was bidding on it versus everybody else, I was planning on being here every single week. He might be here every 2 weeks. So if you specify, the place should be cleaned before meetings per se, or at least once every 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be. And I know it wasn't mulched until late in the season, but that might be something you guys requested. I don't know, but generally you don't mulch in July or August. You usually do that in the springtime, but this place was void of mulch until I believe the summertime, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know if that's what the contract specified, but usually you want to get the pre-emergent down and the mulch down first thing, but that's not what you guys did here. And quality of mulch, triple ground black dyed. You guys seem to go with the double ground, cheap mulch, but with the money you guys have, you might want to splurge the other $2 a yard for the better mulch. It's money well spent. The place would look much better. But if you get more specific on the contract, then you could have the same, 5 people actually bidding on something they know, a quantity that they're aware of, and that wasn't the case last year. Because it was a fairly confusing proposal, even for I think the park down in Fallsington. I thought we had to do a lot more down there, but apparently I think your guys take care of most of the park in Fallsington, don't they?
Don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Gray, in terms of the commemorative park in Fallsington, how much of that does our Public Works guys?
Our Public Works do some of the work down there. I think they do a majority of it, actually.
That's what that's what got confusing, because I was charging for stuff that maybe wasn't part of the package. Right. But if you want some assistance putting something together, I'd be more than happy to help you out if you have any questions or.
Yeah, it might be a little bit awkward to have you obviously.
Well, it's not giving me any insight into the contract. It's just giving you
but
specifics like, hey, you're going to want to ask for a quantity of mulch. You're going to ask for how many times are you coming here to weed the place. Mm-hmm. How many chemical applications you're putting down, stuff that's not going to, if you don't want me to do it, hire an outside firm to do it. But there's standard questions that everyone's going to answer and give you prices on. So, and it won't give anyone an advantage or disadvantage. But
right, and it is relatively new for us. In the past, services like this were just sort of given to companies without really much bidding going on.
Yes.
It was just someone was called and said, okay, you're going to do this, and they got the job for the year, and they got however many thousands of dollars. And we've made the change over the past few, especially when Mr. Gray came in, some changes regarding making sure we're being competitive and opening it up to new businesses and seeing if we really are getting the most bang for a buck.
Yes.
So it was kind of a new thing for us to do that, and I appreciate your input, and Mr. Dents was mentioning it, that you had sort of, you weren't in the room at the time. But
I think you actually pull information off the internet, like boilerplate stuff for landscaping service, like basic contracts, and you might be able to find all this information yourself. I mean, it's pretty standard, timelines. It's pretty standard types of chemicals. There's obviously different brands of chemicals, but the frequency of applications. I mean, you can go to Home Depot and get a bag of Scott's, and they'll tell you this is when you put down the chemicals. It's pretty much the same for everybody. You just use a different grade of chemical. But same with Roundup applications, and continually coming in here and spraying the place. Your shrub trimming, how many times you want it done, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so that's one of the changes that Mr. Gray is making sure Mr. Arneo is working with Mr. Arneo to make sure that the bids are a lot more specific to those things. So, okay, thank you.
Terrific, thank you.
Any other public comment? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, all right then, is there a motion to authorize advertising for fertilizer service?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're up to public comment. Mr. Gray is getting the list of people interested in speaking. Okay, thank you. All right, a couple names on the list. Roland Kinney.
Roland Kenny, Falls Township. First, you often heard me say our police department is the best in the country. These scumbags that like to hurt somebody, do something bad anywhere, I tell them stay out of Falls Township. We had a couple of young men killed a gentleman, threw him in his car, and came across the bridge in the Falls Township. I often tell these scumbags, you can get into Falls Township, but we won't let you out. They got down the Oxford Valley Road, and our police department got them. So our hats off to them. Is Mr. Markey here yet? No? Okay. I got a letter maybe 4 or 5 months ago after Pat Reynolds passed away from old man's glasses, from Karen Atkinson. She's the daughter of Pat Reynolds, and I've been asking ever since then. She sent me a nice letter, would like to see that picture up on the wall next to Mr. Carr of her mother. Well, I seen Mr. Mackey today. He's the one that did it. He put the picture up there, and I asked him today, when are you going to give me that picture? And he said, where you been? That been up there. So he took me over there, and sure enough, Pat's there with her smile looking at her seat. If she was sitting in her seat, she could see herself across the aisle. So I want to thank Mr. Mackey for doing it. Okay, next. Most of you know I volunteer at Penn Manor. On March 13th, Charter Day, that's the first day of the season, it's free. It's open to the public, free. I like to see the public, if they get a chance, to come out. And if you need any directions how to get there, it's 215-946-0400. Because of, what do you call the street down at the end?
Not Bordentown or Pennsbury? Tyburn?
Tyburn Road.
Oh.
It's, you can't get down there at the Penn Manor. You got to go down to the paper and come up that way. Okay, next, on the 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th, I'm going to try to get a table in the Pathmark to get Republicans, Democrats, Independents to sign for Jan Boslowski, to keep her as our judge. I think you all know Jan. Jan's a good woman. She does a lot for the township, and she's a good judge. So I'm going to try to support it. Next, last but not least, the trees. On the day before we start taking down the branches off the trees, I said to somebody that asked me, can we talk before you start taking down the trees? And I said, yeah, we can talk, but they're going to come down within the next 7 days. And so little did I know, I got up late, come downstairs, found the carpenters in my garage putting up my new stairway. And that time I got a call from Mr. Gray asking me to come down to Township talk to him and Mr. Bennett about the trees. And I said, I'm on my way. I got in my car, I started leading, I heard noises down at the end of the street, went down, looked over, they were taking down the trees. Got down here, and Mr. Bennett asked me to stop them from taking down the trees so they can figure out what is right. And I told him, I said, I had them surveyed. They say they're on our property. I sent out letters before when I took down 26, and nobody got back to me. So I started taking it out. Now, I said, I'll stop it. But each day it's costing us money. And these guys just don't come in and do it and then walk away. So I'm here tonight hoping that I get an answer whether I can take these trees down or not. Because you probably know you get a better price during the winter as you do any other time of the year to keep their men working. So I'd like to find out tonight to let this guy know whether or not I can take these trees down and put up other trees and put up a new fence. That fence is terrible as far as I look at everything. The only thing I need on that property is a post and rail fence. I came down here before and looked in this, all the files in here, and that's all I could find. And I sent my secretary, Guido Mariani, up to Doylestown, and all he could find was a post and rail fence. And then I had them surveyed, and these trees are still on our property. Everybody wants trees. I want trees. But these, you know, I got a guy up here last meeting saying 30-foot trees. These are 90-foot. And all we did so far to them trees is saved the electricity for the people across Pennsylvania Avenue, because all them branches was in between them electric lines. And I know a good ice storm like we had, if you look up the far end of there's a lot of branches down, I mean big ones. They would have brought them wires down, they wouldn't have had electricity.
Okay. I think Mr. Mariani, or Mr. Kinney, sorry, Mr. Mariani.
That's okay. Anytime with him.
I think, Mr. Kinney, the short answer to your question is no. At this point, you have to be sort of in a holding pattern until we decide what's going to happen with the trees. I think some of the trees were so badly damaged they're going to have to come down, but others I think are going to have to stay. And I believe there was a meeting scheduled with the residents of that street. With
they had
Mr.
meetings.
Well,
we never had a meeting.
Well, let me finish what I'm saying. Mr. Gray was going to have a meeting, and unfortunately it was the night there was a snowstorm, and so one of the nights there was a snowstorm, and so the meeting was postponed. Has that meeting been rescheduled with the residents?
We had the meeting last Wednesday night with the residents on Pennsylvania Avenue. We have discussed with them the situation with the trees, and we are looking into what we can do with the situation.
Okay, and at some point you're going to have a meeting with the people from Avon just to get their well, not their side of the story. We know the side of the story, but basically to let them know what we have to do. And I know that Mr. Bennett's been working on it. Mr. Sullivan was able to pull some files as well. So it's kind of where we stand right now. I mean, I understand your point about
I really don't need a meeting.
We certainly don't want the trees.
You know, everything. All I need to see is proof in writing saying I did something wrong. I don't think I did anything wrong.
All right. Well, that's something I'd like you to work out when, and Mr. Gray will schedule a meeting with you and Mr. Bennett, and if need be, Mr. Sullivan will be there, and maybe Mr. Clark as well, to give you an idea of what it is that where we think there was a mistake made, and if we think there's some kind of rectification that has to happen, which you have to do. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Joe Kraus?
Board members and people of Falls Township. I just look at the big picture for the future of Falls Township, okay? KYZ. Now, Philadelphia started KYZ, I believe, before Falls Township did. Many people that moved into the KYZ first wound up selling their companies to other businesses. The other businesses says, hey, this is great for us. But then all of a sudden they start realizing with the city wage tax in Philadelphia and all, they're going to be out of there once sooner or later. And I can see it's already happening with some places in Philly. I don't think we have that problem here, okay? But we have to look at the future, just like with the landfill, okay? With the landfill and losing the host community fees, okay, we should be able to regain some sort of host community fees somewhere. We got the island, okay? It's right next to the freshwater port. We actually probably need to get a casino to come in there. We need a marina for large boats. The boat ramp we have right now, that's great for the people of Falls Township with the little boats. That's a great idea. It works hand in hand. You look at the Eagle Stadium, they're putting up these different type of wind energy things. The reason why they're doing it is because the Eagle Stadium's there, they have these things there, the Delaware River's there. We're going to get the landfill. We need to get the same thing. We need to get more solar plants, that we either get the income of selling the solar power energy to the electric companies. Same thing goes with the wind power, to sell it to the electric companies. And if it's coming into Falls Township, or if we're actually leasing the property to somebody, then again, it's another host community fee down the road. And we really need to be going in that direction in the future. Any surveys we're doing on this island and stuff like that, the ballparks like they've done in other areas and stuff like that, we don't need ballparks. We don't need soccer fields, because everything, when this is all done, it's just another thing to maintain. We got a beautiful park, but if we don't have host community fees, it's going to be hard to maintain in the future. And that's where we really got to look for in the future, because, you know, I'm getting old, but my children and their children hopefully will all be staying in Pennsbury School District and Falls Township, because Falls Township is probably one of the best, if not, I believe, #1 township to live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What do you think, guys?
Well, I agree with you on that one. I think a lot of people do. No, I think the host community fees, obviously the landfill that's remaining to be approved, I'm not sure there's a timetable on how long that's going to be around, but obviously we'll probably have, I would say, at least a decade probably of continuing to get landfill fees. But I understand your point, which is what do we do after that?
At the same time, you have to look at that the landfill is not getting the same, we're not getting the same amount from the landfill because they're not putting as much in.
Yeah, but the idea is not, the idea with the landfill is that they're going to put it in eventually. You know, the slowdown in the economy has affected them too, so they're not putting as much into it, but the amount of space they have stays the same. So whether they fill it in the landfills that are in operation now, if it takes them another 3 years to fill it, or if it takes them 5 years, or it takes them 7 years, they're going to fill it. They have no intention of stopping with any airspace left and then going somewhere else. And so it will, the money will come. It's just how quickly it comes. If it comes, you know, spread out over 3 years or 5 years or 2 years or whatever, that depends on the economy. But I appreciate your ideas about looking forward. And one of the things I can mention is we are going to have a meeting regarding Biles Island. That we're inviting some public input about different ideas that people have about how we can use that island. And the engineers we've hired are doing an excellent job of listening to people and getting different input from not only people that work in this building, but from people in the public. And so pay attention to, it'll be on the channel on the website in terms of when those dates will be, and it'll be in this room, and anybody's welcome to come with any ideas you have. Solar panels, we have actually talked a little bit with the engineers, T&M, because they have some experience with working in Jersey, I believe, with some companies that do lease property from municipalities to put solar panels up. And so, like you're saying, there is sort of a give back of money to the township in addition to free energy in some cases. So that's something we're exploring.
Just one more item. In the KOIZ track, closest to, say, the freshwater port or the landfill, how much of that area is already developed compared to the rest of the area?
It's pretty, the area right near the port is pretty well developed, if not completely
But-
developed.
But that's, some of that area, though, is for use for the freshwater port.
The Kinder Morgan, yes. Kinder Morgan and Waste Management both unload and unload vessels in that
Okay,
port.
but again, waste management will be out of there.
Well,
so-
well, at some point, but
Right.
the bulk of the port is
Okay.
Kinder Morgan.
That's
So-
all I got.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Those are all the names on the list. Or anybody else who wishes to speak? I see no hands. Okay. Minutes, January 18th, 2011. Sneaky feeling these might be unanimous. Comments or questions regarding the minutes, Mr. Snipes?
No questions or comments. Once again, excellent minutes, Mrs. Pullen. Thank you so much.
Mr. Dents?
None.
And I have none. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented January 18th, 2011?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, engineer's report is dated February 11th. This is for January. Mr. Sullivan, highlights from the engineering report?
A few highlights this evening, Mr. Chairman. The Falsington Library project is substantially complete, and the contractor's been placed in the maintenance bond period, which will extend for a year from about today. Road program, all the storm sewer installation is being completed most likely by the end of this week, at which point the contractor will then move into actual road reconstruction, first starting with replacing curb along Alden Avenue, and then actually digging the road up and replacing it with our new pavement section. And the boat ramp has made some significant progress recently. The timber piles are being installed right now. Once the timber piles are in, then the actual boat ramp itself can be formed and poured, and we expect that to happen Monday of next week. We actually have the boat ramp in place. At that point, they then put in the piles for the docks, and they can remove all the stuff that's in the river at this point, the Colfer Dam and such, and be out of the river in time for the moratorium and working the river of March 15th. So that's good progress on the boat ramp at this time.
Okay. All right, thank you. Comments or questions for Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Snipes?
The moratorium you just mentioned, you said is March 15th?
Yes.
That's because of the season for...
Season for the, I think, the red-bellied turtle.
Red-bellied turtle.
One of the endangered species, I think that's it.
So we anticipate the boat ramp to open on what date, do you think?
Sometime in April.
Spring, right? Yeah. Yeah, April or so, sometime in April.
Looking more like toward the end of
Patrick's Day's
April
not
than...
gonna happen, no.
It's not St. Patrick's Day, no.
Well, it would be great if we had some kind of ribbon cutting or celebration, or, you know, invite folks to put their boats in the water and celebrate a success. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about a boat ramp for at least 10 years. You need to get your boat first. Get that boat and then bring it down.
We, I said not me.
So, yeah, it's exciting. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dents, comments or questions for Mr. Sullivan?
You did comment that finally the road program will be progressing on Alden Avenue in that area?
That is correct.
Okay, because it's still a mess down there. I know the weather played a big part in it now, from one thing after another.
It has, but it looks like the weather's going to break for us finally.
But I go to 7-Eleven on Alden Avenue every morning, and every morning I hear about the road there, so.
Pretty soon you'll be hearing good things. Hope so.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, and regarding the boat ramp, I had a lot of questions from people. The most common question I get is, when's it going to open? We just heard the answer to that. And the next sort of most common question, most popular question I get is the fee for putting the boats in the water. The board has yet to make a real firm decision. We've had some input from Mr. Reese, of course, as a park, so he, as Park and Rec Director, is doing a lot of work on this. We've also had some input from T&M, one of the engineers who works actually in this building, is an avid boater and has a lot of experience with boat ramps all over the area, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, everywhere else, and so he's been giving us a lot of input as well. So that's very valuable. And what I can say is I think we've agreed on the fact that there will be some kind of staggered price frame for Falls residents regarding a sort of a yearly pass or seasonal pass compared to non-Falls residents. We haven't exactly figured out the monetary figure at this point, but I know in some discussions we've had, I think all of us are sort of in favor of giving a discounted rate to Falls residents for a seasonal boat pass compared to non-Falls residents. So But good news, and stay tuned, and we'll be making some decisions and making them public pretty soon, I hope, within the next month probably. But thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for your comments and questions. Any public comment needed? See one hand. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Kraus, you have to use the microphone, sir. Sorry.
Public comment during the engineer's report.
I know, like, the current of the Delaware River, okay, you have to be careful with these items, or what we're talking about is like an amphibicar, okay? There's a registry on the web of amphibicars that are in this area, and there's, I believe, 3, possibly 4, okay? But they could go down that ramp as for the grand opening and still go right around in there and out, and I'll tell you what that'd be like. Wow, you get 4 of them there, you know? So it's just an idea. You could look and see, and, you know, those things, they all work. The ones I know of.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
I see them at car shows.
Right.
Okay.
All right,
Just
thank
an
you.
idea.
Thank you. Okay, motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, is there a motion to accept the January 2011 engineering report?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. The bill list for February 15th, 2011 is in the amount of $1,737,116.77. Of that, $1.7 million, 75% of that, over $1.3 million, involves the road program, workers' compensation, health insurance, payroll, and electricity. So it gives you an idea out of a bill list that is 18 pages long. You know, basically 5 items make up 75%, and everything else is involved in the other, you know, roughly $400,000. Comments or questions regarding the bill list? Mr. Snipes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Gray, what do we anticipate in healthcare increase costs this year?
Those projections should come out next month, possibly April. We've been looking between, the last few years, between 12 and 14% each year.
Do you think it'll hold?
Probably.
I don't remember what we budgeted for this year. Was it in that range, 12
in
or
that
14%?
ballpark, yes.
Okay.
About 14%.
Yeah, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Dents?
No.
All right. Okay, is there a motion to approve the bill list in the amount of $1,737,116.77?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, manager comment?
Just a few items tonight. First item concerns the heating and air conditioning maintenance contract. Recently, the township received a proposal for an annual maintenance contract for the township's heating and air conditioning units. This contract is provided by Ray Litwin's Heating and Air Conditioning. They have been providing the service to the township for the past year. The cost of the contract remains as it did in 2010 at $4,750. At this time, the board is asked to consider the annual maintenance contract with Ray Litwin's Heating and Air Conditioning for 2011 in the amount of $4,750.
Okay. And Ray Litwin has done this last year, I believe they did it as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we were satisfied with their service?
Yes, we were.
Okay. All right, comments or questions for Mr. Gray? If not, is there a motion?
Yes, I'd make a motion that we award our contract for heating and air conditioning maintenance to Ray Litwin's Heating and Air Conditioning for 2011 in the amount of $4,750.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Next item I have is a letter from Tom Beach at Remington Vernick Engineers regarding escrow release number 1 for Sims Metal East. He is recommending the release of $153,171 to Sims Metal. The amount remaining in escrow will be $707,028. At this time, the board is asked to consider this release of escrow funds.
Okay. Assuming no comments or questions from board members on this, is there a motion to approve escrow release number 1?
I'll make the motion to approve escrow release number 1.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Next item I have is a letter from Crystal Fisher, dated January 24th, representing Liberty Towers, located at 9188 New Falls Road. She is requesting an extension on this land development application until April 24th, 2011. At this time, the board is asked to consider this extension.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the time extension for Liberty Towers to April 24th, 2011?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question. Did we not deny this when they came before us?
It was denied in front of the zoning hearing
Oh, it
board.
was the zoning board, I'm sorry.
This matter is now the subject of an appeal to Doylestown on the zoning hearing board denial. It's now the subject of a federal lawsuit based on the denial from the zoning hearing board. We have requested of the applicant that they give us a indefinite extension until both of those matters are resolved, but we just keep doing the 60-day, 90-day extensions, so.
Thank you. I'll second the motion then.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I have another letter from Mr. Doug Maloney, representing land development application on Jennifer Lane. This letter is dated February 10th. He is requesting an extension on this particular project until March 15th, 2011. The board is asked to consider this time extension.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the time extension for Jennifer Lane till March 15th, 2011?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I have a letter from William Mafucci, dated January 20th, representing Trench Tech. They are requesting an extension on their preliminary land development application until May 12th, 2011. The board is asked to consider this time extension as well.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the time extension to May 12th, 2011 for Trench Tech the Trench Tech building at 1979 Old Bristol Pike?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
E. Aye. Sorry. I was looking at something.
There's a couple other vowels in there.
Yes.
Like the I-O-U,
A, E, I, O,
sometimes
U.
Y.
I'd spice it up a little bit.
You, maybe, not E.
All right.
Recently, the township received an application for the annual spring 2011 bare root tree offer. The bare root trees would be available in April for planting shortly thereafter. The township has done similar bare root tree programs in prior years, planting them throughout the township. Over 150 trees have been purchased through this program by the township. At this time, the board is asked to consider the purchase of 40 trees as part of the Tree Vitalize program in the amount of $1,400.
Okay, and I believe we talked, Mr. Maloney this evening was just talking about with the air products, $3,500 coming in lieu of trees. So this is a good thing, and planting almost 200 trees over the past couple of years is pretty impressive. So, and I'd like to thank you, Mr. Gray. I know you've worked a lot with the members of the Shade Tree Commission as well. They've put in a lot of time and effort to do this, so I appreciate your work on this. Is there a motion to approve $1,400 for the bare root spring 2011 bare root tree offer?
Mr. Chairman, before we do that,
sorry,
is
yes.
how much money do we have in the fund right now, the tree fund?
Tree fund, $10,800.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'll make that motion.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
My next item is a request from Nevin Rovenelt, representing the American Legion, Post 834, dated January 15th. They will be holding the 65th annual Memorial Day Parade on Sunday, May 29th, 2011. They are requesting a contribution in the amount of $6,000 for this event. This money has been budgeted with the township this year, and they have also provided a budget for the event itself. At this time, the board is asked to consider this contribution to the American Legion.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the $6,000 to the American Legion for the May 29th Memorial Day Parade?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
On Wednesday morning, January 26, 2011, the township declared a snow emergency for the township starting at 9:30 a.m., continuing until Thursday afternoon, January 27th at 5 p.m. By declaring this, the township snow trucks were able to plow all the roads in the township without cars being parked on the streets. Per the township ordinance, the manager may declare a local emergency subject to ratification by the Board of Supervisors. At this time, the board is asked to approve this action imposed by the township manager.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the manager's declaration of a snow emergency?
Yes, so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Finally, just a few announcements from the Park and Rec Department. Residents may register with the Park and Rec Department for the winter recreation programs at the Park and Rec office, Monday through Friday, beginning, actually at any time, beginning at 8:30 a.m. through 4:30 p.m. The Park and Rec Department will also be accepting summer camp registrations for children ages 5 through 13 years old, starting March 1st. The summer camp program will run from June 27th through August 5th. It will be held at Manor Elementary School. Finally, the Pondwood Pool membership applications will be available to everyone very shortly. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we're up to board comment. Mr. Snipes, start with you, if you don't mind.
I have a quick question. The pool, when's the opening date for the pool? For the Pinewood Pool?
Yeah, it's 28th. I think it's a Saturday, Memorial Day?
Yeah, I believe it's the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
Great. I was reminded, we were talking about the Learning Center today, Learning Experience, I'm sorry, the daycare center looking to locate on New Falls Road, that we haven't returned to our discussion of sidewalks on New Falls Road. I know it's a little bit of a tricky situation. We had some proposals that were on the expensive side, as some people were thinking. There were differences of opinions on whether we want to encourage walking along the road, as now is, in my opinion, already happening, or how do we make it safer. So I don't want to avoid the subject just because we got a big price tag. We need to come back and actually think about it and begin to make some decisions. Also, Mr. Kraus raised the issue of, well, what it made me think of was long-range financial projections, which we've discussed before about what do we do when the landfill closes, how much money do we have in the bank, how do we care for that money in the best way, how do we spend the money. And so I hope we're going to come back to some discussions about long-range financial planning as well. And then also I just want to make a personal statement about how inspiring it's been in the past couple weeks to see what's happening around the world in terms of political change, and what happened in Egypt and Tunisia and what's been happening in Bahrain and Iran. It's inspiring, I think, for all of us. Often we only hear negative news coming out of different parts of the world. And I think for us to be inspired by what people are doing in a different country is always a good thing. And I hope they may be taking some lessons from some of the activism that happened in our own country during the civil rights period and other periods. Also there is something happening in our country right now, which I just noticed on the internet. If you're curious, go to Google and look up Kentucky and the capital of Kentucky. There's been a sit-in at the governor's office with miners and others who are concerned about mining practices in Appalachia. And it's inspiring to see people standing up and beginning to speak about issues they're concerned about in our democracy. So I think that's a good development. And hopefully that's going to go around the world and inspire all of us. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for a productive evening, and good night.
Thank you. Mr. Dents?
I just want to say that the weather's finally starting to get nice, and hopefully the snow is gone for the rest of the year. Baseball season officially started yesterday, and for the first time all year, Mr. Kenny has no Phillies anything on.
Yes, he does. He has his coat.
He has his coat. Okay. I was disappointed. I'm also going to comment on something Mr. Gray brought up about the Pinewood Pool, that this year the township, rather than contracting out to manage the pool, we're doing it in-house ourselves. So we are hiring lifeguards. I know it's advertised on the cable channel and such, so if anyone is interested in lifeguarding for the pool, they should contact Mr. Reese, right? Pete, is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Reese?
Yes, Mr. Dents, yes.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
St. Patrick's Day Parade, will someone announce that?
Well, the St. Patrick's Day Parade is going to be on Saturday, March 12th, 10:30, the usual. Last year there wasn't a St. Patrick's Day parade because of really bad weather. This year, again, March 12th on Saturday, starting at 10:30 at St. Joseph's the Worker and ending near Worcester Road in Bristol Township. So it's always a great parade. It's one of the largest parades, I think, in the county. It's always a very good time, and so we encourage people to come on out for that. A couple things. The mention was made of Tyburn Road. I think actually it's Mr. Kinney who talked about Tyburn Road. The township was informed, I guess about, a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that one of the bridges over Tyburn Road, if anybody who's been going down there knows that for the past, I guess, year and a half or 2 years or so, there's been a lot of work, construction work on the bridges over Tyburn Road, or that go from Tyburn Road over different roads and railroad, et cetera. I'm trying to think of how long ago it was, maybe 3 years ago, if it was that long. Doesn't seem that long ago, that there was a bridge in Minneapolis that collapsed and killed many people, and it caused the entire country to start looking at some of these bridges that we usually just take for granted. They've been there 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and a lot of the structures were found to be not very safe. And so the reconstruction and the repairs of the Tyburn Road bridges was ongoing. I think a lot of it might be finished. However, the bridge over the railroad line was not done. Apparently some miscommunication between Amtrak and PennDOT not being able to agree. And the problem now is that bridge is failing structurally and has been closed by PennDOT for safety reasons. Literally chunks of concrete falling off of it. The problem, of course, is that's the only bridge to get down to whether it's the KIPC or whether it's getting down to Pennsylvania Avenue or getting to Pennsbury Manor or the Quaker Penn Park, going from Falls Township. That's pretty much kind of one of the only ways you can go. And so what's been happening over the past few weeks is more and more vehicles traveling, as Mr. Kinney said, down through Tullytown and up, or coming from Marsville down Pennsylvania Avenue until you get on Tyburn Road that way, because that end of Tyburn Road near the old steel mill entrance and even up to New Ford Mill Road is still open. We had some discussions last week with local businesses, as well as a representative from U.S. Senator Bob Casey's office, and we've had some contact with PennDOT, and it does not look like that bridge is going to open anytime soon. It could be a couple years before that bridge opens. The difficulty is that the railroad lines that bridge goes over is the Northeast Corridor for Amtrak, which is, I think everyone recognizes, the busiest, most heavily traveled section of railroad in America. And so you can't just shut it down. And obviously it's not that easy to just put a detour in for trains. And so there has to be a lot of coordination in terms of how do you work on a bridge over the heaviest railroad line in America. And probably, I guess you could say, probably one of the heaviest railroad lines in the world, most heavily traveled. So we are working on it. We're aware of it. It's obviously it's something we wish would have been done better. But at some point, that bridge is going to have to be shut down completely, and it's now. So it is something we're working on. We've had contact with Representative Galloway's office, and also with pretty much any elected official who represents us, state and federal, to try and get them to maybe push the agencies to move a little quicker. Whether that happens or not, we're not sure, but it is something we'll continue to work on. And I've had contact with the representative from Marsville's government to let him know that about the situation and talk with him a little bit, and they're very understanding. Obviously, they don't like the idea of all the trash trucks and other heavy-duty vehicles running through their town, going to those heavy industrial sites, but they know there's not much they can do about it. So, but that's the situation. It's going to be that way for a while, so we're going to have to adjust to that. The other issue I wanted to bring up quickly, we have a letter from Nevin Rovenalt, who's been a member of the EAC, the Environmental Advisory Council, for over 20 years, is also actually the gentleman who is an American Legion member and coordinates the parade every year. And he is asking to be reappointed to the EAC for a full term. And so I'll nominate him for a full term on the EAC. So there's a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and with that, I want to thank everybody for a good meeting, the professionals and my fellow board members and members of the public who came out. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
E.
Aye. Thank you.
Aye.